Yo, what is going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and today we are hopping right back into the top 50 list in NBA history in my own assessment. Now today we got none other than Giannis Antetokounmpo, aka better known as the Greek Freak. Now, where do I have the Greek Freak on my all-time list? As of today, I currently have him at number 29. Now, before we hop right into this video about the Greek Freak, about Giannis, gonna need you guys to hit the like button, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and all that good jazz, and then we can be on our way. But without further ado, let's get into Giannis. In terms of his career, he is a 5-time NBA All-Star from 2017 until 2021. He also has made the All-NBA team for all 5 of these years. 3 times he was All-NBA First Team from 2019 until 2021, and he was Second Team All-NBA in 2017 and 2018. In fact, he even was a back-to-back League MVP in 2019 and 2020. The later of those 2 years, in 2020, he also took home Defensive Player of the Year, and he's also been a 3-time member of the All-Defensive First Team from 2019 until 2021. He did manage to make All-Defensive Second Team in 2017. Now, staying on the topic of 2017, he won Most Improved Player that year as well, and as we all know, most recently, he became an NBA champion and an NBA Finals MVP this past year in 2021. Now, in terms of some MVP shares, I mean, we know he's received votes for all of the past 5 years and won 2 times, but this past season, I mean, he finished 4th, which might have even been a surprise in some ways. Sure, Jokic deserved a win, but Embiid did miss a lot of games, and Curry even missed the playoffs while also missing a few games. So I think you could realistically argue Giannis for being as high as second in terms of who deserved the MVP this year. Now, me personally, I think third was the move. I think him and Steph could have been flipped because, I mean, it's hard to give someone MVP honors when they aren't in the playoffs. Although Curry would have made my top 4 regardless, which in itself is pretty impressive considering his team's placement. But back talking about Giannis, where does he rank on some all-time stats as of today? His 20.9 points per game puts him 46th all-time. A 9.1 rebound per game average puts him 88th all-time. A 60% true shooting average puts him 28th in NBA history. A 23.7 PER puts him 18th all-time. A .187 win share per 48 rating puts him 33rd all-time. A 35.8 VORP rating puts him 75th in NBA history. 3.5 offensive box plus minus for 42nd all-time. A 1.9 defensive box plus minus for 29th all-time. And a 5.4 box plus minus in all puts him 18th in NBA history. Now, these are still pretty high rankings, but of course we've seen players accomplish better than that I placed lower on this list. However, you got to keep in mind that Giannis is still just 26 years old, and most players hit their prime starting around this age. So while most of these players already listed are either retired or in later years of their career, Giannis will still have a lot more to come. And in terms of his 2020 season, where he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, he joined only Michael Jordan in 1988 and Hakeem Olajuwon in 1994 as the only players to win both of these awards in the same year. And in terms of his PER over the past 5 seasons, ever since he's become an All-Star, he has a 28.8 rating, which, if that was his career average, would be first in NBA history by almost a whole point edge over the person that would fall right behind him, and that being Michael Jordan. But now let's take a look at Giannis and his playoff career. Now, of course, his stats are going to look nicer in the playoffs in whole simply because he had to develop early in his career, and in those developing seasons, they didn't make the playoffs for a lot of them except for 2015. So it's not really fair to include that into his regular season to playoff transition for each individual season of peak Giannis. Why? Well, because if Giannis played his whole career like how he was as a rookie or sophomore, then he wouldn't even sniff the top 50 list. So that's why I'm comparing it this way. Now, when looking at the stats as a whole, a majority of them do drop in the postseason compared to the regular season, but it's not by a substantial margin to make a big deal about. In fact, the biggest flaw you could say that's evident in the playoffs on a much greater level than the regular season is his free throw percentage. I mean, it sits at approximately 11% lower in the playoffs ever since his first All-Star year. However, his 25.9 points per game in the playoffs is 13th all-time, and his 11.6 rebounds per game is 18th all-time in the playoffs. Now, if you remove his 2015 series against Chicago before Giannis officially became, Giannis, he finds himself at 27.3 points per game for 7th all-time and 12.1 rebounds per game for 15th all-time. In terms of all-time NBA players that are top 15 in points per game and rebounds per game for the playoffs, the only other person that would be on this list with Giannis is Elgin Baylor. Now, in terms of the 11 playoff series since 2017 for Giannis, he has averaged 20 points per game in 11 of 11 series, 10 rebounds per game in 9 of 11 series, 5 assists in 8 of 11 series, and shot over his regular season field goal percentage on 6 of these 11 series as well. However, we can't ignore that the two biggest series against Giannis for his playoff career, and that was the 2019 Eastern Conference Finals against Toronto and the 2020 second round against Miami. In these two series, Giannis averaged his two lowest point per game values in a playoff series since becoming an All-Star. They were two of the three least efficient series for him over the stretch, and he shot under 60% from the free throw line in both series as well. And just as we know, he was the higher seed and the odds-on favorite to win both these series. In games 1 and 2 against the Raptors, Giannis was pretty good. I mean, he dominated the glass, he was efficient, a plus 25 in those two games. But then, as we know, Kawhi Leonard happened. And when he took the assignment of Giannis, his life was becoming a nightmare. I mean, Kawhi in the final 4 games averaged nearly 10 more points per game on much better efficiency than Giannis, along with being a much more efficient playmaker than Giannis, on more steals per game than Giannis, in less foul trouble than Giannis. I mean, the Greek Freak in the next 4 games averaged about 20 points per game, 12.5 rebounds a game, 5.5 assists, 4 turnovers on 43% from the field and 47% from the free throw line on a minus 15 plus minus. And as we know, the Raptors would go on to win the championship that year. Now in 2020, from a quick glance, you might think that Giannis was relatively efficient this series, but he really wasn't. Of course, we know he was playing great in Game 4 before he got hurt and ultimately missed Game 5 as well. But Giannis in the first 3 games of the series was, to put it simply, pathetic. Yes, he averaged about 23, 13, and 7 in these games, but he had shooting splits of 45, 15, and 54 in those games, as well as being a minus 30 plus minus. In the fourth quarters of this series, Giannis averaged about 5 points per game on 41% from the field, 44% from free throw line on a minus 30 as well. And remember, I just said that he was a minus 30 for both the series and the fourth quarter, which means that he was neutral throughout the first 3 quarters of the game, which is just something to think about. Lastly, he never asserted himself into taking the Jimmy Butler assignment, who outplayed Giannis this series and torched him especially in games 1 and 3. But when it came to this season for Giannis, I mean, he was strictly business. He even said in the offseason how he didn't want to be called the MVP again after being a back-to-back NBA regular season MVP for the past 2 years, and rather he wanted to be called it once he managed to be on top and win the finals MVP. Now, in the first round this year, Giannis wasn't entirely efficient offensively, but it was the team's offensive unity clicking as well as the Bucks' defense making it hard for the Heat to pull off a second-year upset. Giannis especially made it hard on Jimmy Butler, so much so that Bryn Forbes literally outscored Jimmy Butler in this series. In the second round, I know many believe a healthy Brooklyn team would have won this series, and it's hard to disagree with that. I mean, a 2-0 lead in a very winnable Game 3 with injuries. I mean, KD was playing insane, but the early Harden injury and the late Kyrie injury hurt their chances, and the Bucks won in 7, while KD was pretty much doing a carry job. Although Giannis was still pretty good in Game 7. I mean, 40, 13, and 5, that's not a bad stat line at all. In the conference finals, they took down the Hawks, but Giannis hyperextended his knee in Game 4, and the Bucks had to close the deal without him. But in the finals, Giannis was unreal, averaging 35 points, 13 rebounds, and 5 assists on 62% from the field, and even dropped 50 points on 17 and 19 from the free throw line in the final Game 6, in what is possibly his greatest series ever, at one of the greatest times as well. I mean, you got to think of him in a class with guys like Jordan in 93 or Shaq in 2000. It's one of the greatest final series we've ever seen. So when it comes to Giannis Antetokounmpo, I would say that he is properly rated. You know, after they won the championship, I was kind of leaning toward overrated, considering right after the Bucks title, People were saying that he's probably top 15 for sure, top 20 and all that. But lately, I think that's kind of worn off with the recency bias, and now people are putting him a lot lower. But you still see arguments on both sides, so I think properly rated is a little fair. I know he's still lower probably on my list than most, but it's hard to put so much pressure on just one season. I get that he was great in the finals, one of the greatest ever, like I said, especially coming off that injury, which not enough people bring up. But for one, it definitely took a lot of luck with the Nets injuries, the Lakers injuries, and the team that I thought was going to win it all this year, which was the Los Angeles Clippers. Based on how resilient their team was, their chemistry building at the right time, and their role players stepped up more consistently than arguably any other team in the postseason, and with Tyronn Lue's ability to make adjustments, and with Kawhi's ability to take the responsibility of Giannis probably better than most players we've seen. And outside of this year, Giannis was kind of known as a playoff choker by most people. And it was pretty truthful, which is why I didn't even know prior to the season if he was really top 50 material. But obviously this championship helps his resume a lot, and I'm not going to jolt him up near top 10, 15 right now because that's kind of crazy. But I think 25 to 30 as of right now is fair in my opinion. And if you don't think so, just think that everybody that I have on my list, he has the highest potential in terms of ranking better on this list by the time he retires. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think about Giannis. I mean, he had a crazy season this past year. He's been crazy for a few years now. I mean, the longevity factor hasn't totally been there because it's only been about half a decade's worth. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'm out. Peace.